Welcome to Scoop Orders Sunday night. There's been a lot of bad NFL football today. I hope you guys survived that. The playoffs start next week. Go Brownies versus CJ Stroud and the Texans. It's going to be exciting to watch. I hope you guys had a great weekend. We're going to break down some of the early enrollees. JJ Smith is now officially a Buckeye. He's on campus today. They checked into the WAC. They had lunch. They got their dorm rooms, and now they are ours. So it's time for Coach Mick to get his hands on these guys and some of these upperclassmen to lead some of these guys. So we've got as big of a mid-year class I've ever seen, over 20 kids. So we're going to get into all that, break that down. Coaching search buzz, transfer portal buzz. We were in the running for a D tackle from Alabama for about 3.5 minutes. That was breaking all over the internet. And then he came into South Carolina. So it's tampering real. It's very real. Yes, it is. So as always, we appreciate you guys. I hope you guys had a great weekend. If you guys enjoy this content, please leave us a like, click subscribe. Also click that little alert bell. As always, we appreciate your support. If you guys have a question you're dying to know right now, send us a super chat and we will answer it immediately. We drop everything, stop the show, and we get after it and we make sure we answer your questions. So again, we appreciate you guys. Again, our channel is #1 in the entire sphere right now for Ohio State football. It's not an accident. We podcast like the rent is due, baby. So we're always on the grind. Always get you guys the freshest info, the most accurate info. And that's why everybody else watches us, because we've got the best information and it's really fun to deliver to you guys. That being said, we're going to bring in our own JJ Smith, Mr. Nevada Buck. Nevada, JJ is in town. A lot of these guys, James Peoples, are fresh. Ian Moore, fresh off the Army All-American game. A different universe. I mean, back in the olden days of 20 years ago, even 10 years ago, 2011, I think we had 2 or 3 guys that would enroll early. This year we have like 20 guys coming in early to join Ohio State. And again, I think that is critical for development. Again, it's a huge sacrifice for a lot of these guys because, you're giving up your second half of your senior year of high school, which, when you're an Ohio State commit, you're the big man on campus. You can kind of chill, cruise into summer. These kids aren't doing it. They're here early. They're going to get their butts kicked in winter workouts. Matt drills with Mickey Marotti. Talk a little bit about JJ Smith and what does it mean when these guys enroll early? What do you project for some of these guys? James Peoples, JJ, they're there. They can learn the offense. They can start getting acquainted with the jugs machine, the Monarch machine, the weight room, training table. What are your thoughts on all that?
Well, somebody made a really good point to me about this, and I was talking to one of my sources at Ohio State, and he was talking about how this is almost like getting an additional recruiting class in. And I was like, well, what do you mean? What do you mean by that? And he goes, well, look, 2024 is most definitely a national championship year. It's one of those years where everything's lined up, we're loaded. We've got Michigan at home. We've got the expanded playoff. We've got just a ton of returning guys. He goes, but with these 20, freshmen coming in this early, you might get 1, 2, 3, or whatever to be able to actually, contribute next year. And that's something that they really haven't had the benefit of doing in the years past. And to have a class this big for a year this special like 2024, one guy can make the difference. One guy can make that special play, can make the thing. We all know how the season's. Look at 2023. 2023 came down to one throw against Michigan, and everything could have been different. So, one player, one play, 1 yard, one thing differently can make the whole season, end a completely different way. So I'm excited about having these guys on, and having a guy like JJ Smith on. It just sends a message that Ohio State's back, that you've got a guy that, as we've talked about, probably the best wide receiver recruit to ever come to Ohio State. And he's not only here, but he's in early. And that makes such a difference. You look at like Carnell Tate and Brandon Inniss, 2 similar wide receivers. One was able to come in early, one wasn't. And one guy got all the burn. And Brandon, did the best he could, but he didn't really get a chance to play that much. And I think it makes that much difference. I think it literally puts you into play for 2024 as a solid potential contributor. And that's great in a national championship year. So I'm certainly excited about it.
I think that, people they're not sure about how big this is. This is the biggest thing you could do as a high school kid who can contribute early. Now, again, skill guys in general have contributed at a much higher rate than bigger guys. Linemen, defensive linemen is mid-years. So, is it the be-all, end-all if a lineman comes in? I don't think so. I think that A lot of these linemen, frankly, I think the Armstrong twins are probably going to redshirt. I think Ian Moore potentially will probably redshirt, play 4 games or less. And then, you better turn up so you can get out of there because, Steve Ryan came in early in '04 and he ended up redshirting. And then he was basically there for like 6 years, which is like an eternity in college. Not during the COVID time, but back in the days, that was a big deal. But I think that, when you get these skill guys up here, they can get used to the quarterback's rhythm. They can get in the room with Brian Hartline, Keenan Bailey, some of these guys, and really start learning the offense. It's a huge edge because, again, skill guys can play a lot easier. It's like, one of probably the greatest early enrollee in the history of Ohio State football is Maurice Clarett, 2002. Back when it was a very new phenomenon to come in early, Maurice was a guy that came in early from Warren Harding, and again, it's credit to Warren Harding because the biggest thing that is an issue with a lot of these high schools is you have to be able to double up an English credit at some point. So if that means you have to go to summer school, and again with the advent of online school, it's been a lot easier to get these credits caught up. But a guy like Justin Zwick was at Madison, Washington the same year as Maurice. He wanted to come in early. Madison, Washington did not offer it. My high school did not offer it. And again, I did not want to come in early because I was like, it's a total waste of my time because I'm going to redshirt no matter what. Because we've got 5 seniors back on the O line, so I ain't beating those guys out. So I'm just going to chill in high school. So you can say whatever, but it was my mentality. But Maurice came in early. Got to know the program, got to know strength and conditioning. And the thing is, like, when you come in early, you kind of almost gravitate and become a part of the previous recruiting class, if that makes sense. So it's like with JJ coming in early, he's almost going to kind of be in that quasi Brandon Innes class who came in the summer. Again, Brandon Innes was from American Heritage. American Heritage does not offer any type of early enrollee. They are an academy. They want as much of your tuition money as they can get. The Innes family even offered to write a check to pay for that extra tuition so he could go early. They denied that. Again, because they're trying to maximize how much money they make off these kids. So JJ kind of joins that Innes class, that summer class that came in, and Cardell's kind of in the class previous. And again, I know this is kind of quasi strange talking about it, but like Dante Whitner was in my recruiting class, but he got here in January of '03. So he kind of joined that '02 class. It was like AJ Hawk and Zwick and all those guys, because a lot of those guys came in August. Like a guy like AJ Hawk, he showed up in August because there was no June enrollment, and that was a new phenomenon in '05. So Dante was a lot closer to guys like AJ Hawk and Bobby Carpenter because they were literally there for 1 quarter longer than Dante. They got there in August, and by the time it was January, Dante had showed up, so they'd been there for August to December, and so he felt a lot closer to those guys than he did with all of us that showed up on August 5th of 2003. Because we had like me, Anthony Gonzalez, a lot of us, we showed up the first day of training camp, and we had our little duffel bags, and ready for check in and go get the screws put to us. But Dante had already been there for 8 months, so he already kind of knew the lay of the land. He knew the workouts, he knew strength stuff, the conditioning tests, a lot of stuff that you kind of take for granted, and you might not know about until you show up in August. And it's a huge advantage. And again, I think the way that they progress these kids now and how athletic they are and how well trained they are, it makes all the sense in the world to enroll. And again, you give a lot of credit to the high schools because they've gotten much more progressive in getting these kids into college earlier. And again, a lot of that's because of online, where you can take 2 classes at once and double things up. And like Coyd Ewers literally skipped an entire year of high school in like a month because he was taking all these online classes, and they were able to stamp it and get him through. And he reclassified. So Nevada, who else are you excited to see in this class? We got a lot of linemen coming in. We got JJ, we got James Peoples. Are there any other guys that you're excited to see what they can do in spring football?
Well, Peoples is just a guy that I just am so excited. I think somehow, some way, this guy has kind of slipped. I think he's a little bit under the radar in terms. I don't think he's not a 5-star, I believe he's 4-star by the rating services. But he is a terrific running back. And every time that I've watched him play, watched a couple of his games live, he's been unbelievable. And he's doing it against some of the best competition. And I cannot wait to see him get on the field here because running back's a position where you can play pretty early at Ohio State if you get the ball, run the ball, do the thing of, if you know the protections, you do things, but running back's position that you can play pretty early. And I think he's the guy that I want to see on the field. He's the guy that I want to see with the ball in his hand because he is absolutely electric. And at running back position, you can't have enough dynamic guys, and you need a pair and a spare for sure. And I think he's going to be in the mix the moment he gets set foot on campus. I can't wait to see him in spring ball.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting because with Trey is still in limbo. We got like 7 8 days to go until the final declaration day is. But I mean, James Peoples. I mean, we believe that Trey will be back. But if something unforeseen happens and he goes pro, he's their number two guy behind Dallin Hayden, and he might beat out Dallin because I think James has a higher upside than Dallin does. And it's nothing against Dallin, but I've seen both their film and I've seen James Peoples. And James Peoples is a first round upside guy. He's a Texas guy, exceptionally smart, incredible bursts, a lot like Ezekiel Elliott. I love watching his tape. But yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see who goes where. And the big question is, does JJ Smith start by the end of spring football? Because I think that with that room, which is always one of the most loaded rooms on the entire team, does the guy surprise? Does a guy like Mylan Graham potentially come out higher than JJ Smith, which could happen? Who knows? Anderson Tate are obviously going to be guys that are going to be in the mix. Emeka Egbuka is a guy that's likely to come back. So, if the first snap of spring ball is Ennis Tate, Emeka, that's as good as we've ever had. And then if you throw JJ in there with Emeka and maybe rotate Ennis through, the slot and the edge positions, the X and the Z, I think that's as nasty as you could ever have. I mean, JJ is a kid who, there's not many sure things in college football. Because again, I've seen these kids. I've seen prodigies and 5 stars and all world and guys that are the highest rated guys ever, and things go sideways. But JJ is so focused on football and so focused on being great that I just don't see any downside to his game. He's going to show up. He's all business. Again, he murdered people in San Antonio at the All American game. I think he's going to do the same thing up here. He's going to get in the weight room, get trained. He already looks like an adult, but like when you start getting him with Mick, get him in the training grounds, you get him nutrition, you get him acclimated to kind of how we do our offense, and get him with Will Howard throwing. I think it's going to be terrifying what this kid can do because, again, I've talked to a lot of recruits, talked to a lot of their parents. His dad is all business. And again, you got to remember, his cousin's Geno Smith. Geno Smith's made a fortune in the NFL with the Seattle Seahawks. He was a second-round pick with the Jets. Didn't pan out with the Jets, went to the Chargers, kind of bounced around. Went to Seattle after they traded Russell Wilson, had a great year, kind of a Verge-ish, Pro Bowl-ish type guy, got a huge deal up there to become their franchise quarterback. So, they're not unfamiliar with what is expected when you're like a great player coming out of Miami. Obviously, what Geno did at West Virginia. A lot of people projected him to be a top 5 pick. He slid to the second round, very famously fired his agent that night. And he's had a great career. And he's a guy that's a good mentor for JJ. But I think JJ's got a huge upside. Couple super chats coming in. If you guys have super chats, please send those in. We will answer these as soon as we can get to them. Jeff Perry, thank you for being a Scoop Ultra member. As always, we're going to do Scoop Ultra chat. We might break down some film. Again, I was watching Seth McLaughlin, our new center from Alabama versus Georgia, a really nice film. Was talking to some of the people on staff at Ohio State about him, and they liked the kid a lot, man. And I'm telling you, against Georgia, he was mauling dudes. He really had a nice game. Snaps were consistent. I mean, he's blocking a guy who's a zero nose from Georgia, who's a really good player, one-on-one, which is tough to do. And I joked with someone I was talking to that, a lot of our fans would probably be in a coffin if they saw that guy across from him in a zero nose, having to block him one-on-one. And Seth didn't. Seth mauled the kid. So it was really good to see. Jeff Perry, again, thank you for the 5. Do you think Cliff Kingsbury would be a good fit at Ohio State if he's still available? OHIO. I don't, just because I don't know if he's what Ryan wants. I think he's a little too finesse for a northern team, in my opinion. Again, I've watched a ton of Cliff Kingsbury. I've had Kyler Murray in fantasy for years. Obviously, he was gone this year, but I don't know. I think that he might be a little too wackadoo for Ryan Day. I think Ryan's got to get a tough guy in there that can pound the rock and win these northern cold games and control the ball and play great defense. And I don't think Cliff Kingsbury is that guy. I think he did obviously great work with Pat Mahomes and with Kyler Murray, but he's out of a job right now, and I don't think he would be a fit for Ohio State given his background in Texas and Arizona and SC and everywhere else he's been. Nevada, your thoughts on Cliff Kingsbury as the OC?
Again, love Cliff Kingsbury. Don't think he's a good fit for Ohio State for a lot of the reasons that you said. We're talking about trying to take baby steps with Ryan in terms of introducing the quarterback run game back into kind of his lexicon, and Cliff would kind of freak him out with as much as he runs the quarterback and the different things that he does. So I think that it's going to be someone probably not as established. It'll be more of a junior. It'll be Cliff Kingsbury before he was Cliff Kingsbury, somebody who's doing some interesting things at a smaller school that Ryan likes, that Ryan still feels like he can kind of put his imprint on, still have his fingers in the offense, but have a young, innovative mind there to do it. And that's why I don't think Cliff would be the right guy, even though he'd be fun. He'd be fun, and he's got a hot girlfriend. Yeah. So it would definitely up because I've seen some of the wives and girlfriends of some of the Ohio State staff.
The wags.
They're not great. Just not great.
No, they're 2 stars that would end up at like Heidelberg or Wittenberg or 1 star. Yeah, there's a lot of 1 stars on that staff, man.
You see Jake Browning's girlfriend, and you're like, now that's quality. But then you see the Ohio State wives and girlfriends, and it's just like, no, it's not great. I'm just keeping it real. I'm the truth teller. I'm keeping it real. I'm the only guy that'll keep it real.
You're the only guy on our staff that keeps it real 100% of the time. Keeping it real. It's what you do.
Real. That's what I do.
You keep it real. And again, it's just like our staff and our beat. It's like a dead heat of just gnarly, leave them home, don't show them off, that type of deal. M. DeLuca 907, thanks for the 5. With all of the hot seat talk, what are the minimum expectations and results for Ryan? Most achieved for 24. What gets him off the hot seat? Well, he has to beat Michigan. We got to stop clowning around. We got to stop getting, our teeth kicked in by Michigan. We got to actually become a real tough program. Because again, screaming at a sideline reporter about Lou Holtz, who's 97 years old, about how tough we are, that doesn't work. We have to beat Michigan. Period, point blank. You got to beat Oregon. I mean, you got to basically 1 to 2 losses next year. I think he's safe. More than that, with the new AD coming in, a little bit more difficult. Again, this is a big offseason for Ryan. I mean, this is kind of like, it reminds me of Tom Herman's last offseason when he was at Texas, and he fired like 5 or 6 coaches. He fired Drew Maringer, who was like his son. He fired Derek Wold. I mean, he fired guys that had been with him since he was a nobody at Rice, and it was at Houston. And I mean, he fired everybody. He hired Herb Hand for $2 million to coach the O-line, and he did a terrible job. But it kind of feels like that, where I think Ryan's going to have to make major changes, bring in guys. I talked to a really good source today that he said the Jason Taylor stuff is very real, which is kind of shocking to me because that doesn't seem like a huge fit for me. Because when a guy's been in the league for 15 years and he's an NFL Hall of Famer like Jason Taylor, like, I don't think that he wants to chase kids around with NIL money and that type of deal. I think that he wants to get back into the league and be a D-line coach, DC, potential head coach in the NFL. And I could be reading it completely wrong. And if he comes here, you guys can say, Kirk, you're an idiot. You had no idea what you're talking about. But he's a PA guy, played at Akron. But I think that, guys that are like that, it's like Vrabel. It's like Vrabel wants nothing to do with college football at all. So like people always bring up, well, can we get Vrabel? It's like, if you pay him, just like you make him the highest paid coach in the history of college football, then yes, you can get him. Other than that, there's no chance because he's got a good job with Tennessee. They closed the season with a nice win versus Jacksonville where they shut him out of the playoffs, and Derrick Henry said goodbye and whatever. But Vrabes has got a good spot. He's in Nashville. He's coaching. Owner loves him. He's going to be, if he got let go today, he'd be hired tomorrow by another NFL team. So I don't think he would want to deal with the NIL stuff until it gets regulated, but I could be dead wrong. And if I am, make sure you guys holler at me and let me know. Nevada, what do you think gets Ryan Day off of the hot seat?
I mean, it's look, you got to beat Michigan. You got to make the college football playoff. I think that's like a minimum bid. I'd like to say it's more than that. I'd like to say that he's got to make the Final Four. He's got to win a playoff game, but I don't really think that's it. I think it's that. I think it's beat Michigan. I think he's got enough goodwill built up. He's got enough cachet He's got enough currency with OSU admin that if he beats Michigan and makes the playoff next year, he's safe. Then I'll continue on. But you lose to Michigan, you don't make the college football playoff, then it is absolutely over. And we're on to discussing that candidate. But I really think that Ohio State is going to be a juggernaut next year, and it's going to be by far his best team. And I you know I wouldn't bet against Ohio State beating Michigan and making the playoff. And I'm not sure what type of odds you could get on that, but I'd imagine they'd be pretty short because Ohio State's going to be really, really good in 2024.
Well, and like when you look at their schedule, so again, I always kind of, when we make these pontifications, I look at what's their schedule look like. Well, August 31st, they open with Akron, who will be probably the worst team in college football. Then they play Western Michigan, also awful team. So you have 2 games for Will Howard, the offense, J.J. Smith to get acclimated, James Peoples, defense, new staff, whatever. Then you have a bye week. So after 2 MAC games, you have a bye week. So if it's not going great, you can scrimmage with the guys and get after them a little bit. Then you play Marshall. So you open with 3 home games. Then you play at Michigan State, who stinks. They have a new coach, but they still stink. And then you have Iowa, October 5th. So Iowa will be a real challenge. Obviously, their defense is always good. Their offense is atrocious. So, the first, 5 games are basically all dubs. And then you go to Alton. And then we find out what we got. Because Oregon is going to be loaded next year. Dylan Gabriel's going to be the quarterback. That'll be always a challenging Spencer Lanning. And that'll be a toughie. So you play them. And then, you look at the rest of the schedule, the following week after Alton, and I love this. Anyone that's ever flown to the West Coast for a football game, 5.5 hours on a plane after a game is terrible. They have an off week. So Saturday, October 19th, they're off. Then they play Nebraska, who will likely be starting Dylan Raiola as a freshman. So we'll whoop them. And then Saturday, November 2nd, we go to Penn State, which again, November is a great time to play Penn State at Penn State because there's a tradition with the Big Ten where we generally don't do night games in November. Generally. Now, we did a stupid one versus Michigan State this year that was a massacre, but in general, that usually ends up being a 3:30 game or a big nooner. And then we play Purdue, who stinks. Then we play at Northwestern, who stinks. Then we play Indiana, who stinks. It's kind of a new staff. And then on November 30th, we have Michigan at home. So again, this is one of the best schedules we've ever had at Ohio State. As long as I've been following the team for 30-ish years, this is one of the best schedules we've ever had. Now, again, you got some real ones. You got to play at Penn State, you got to play at Alton, and you got to play Michigan at home, but that's it. The rest of those are dubs. So, and again, and the way the bye weeks are aligned, I love it. So we have 2 bye weeks. One's after the Oregon trip, which is great, and then one's after the first 2 games. So if you have to recalibrate, maybe what hard stinks. Maybe you want to give Devin Brown a look. Again, I have no idea. It's a good spot for a bye week after 2 weeks because you can kind of recalibrate the roster and see who needs more reps and who needs to be displaced. D. Sonny, thank you for the 5. What do you think makes Dallin Hayden so loyal? He seems like the best company man ever. Nevada, I'll let you tackle that first because I seem like I've been doing the talking. But your thoughts on Dallin Hayden and him kind of waiting around a little bit?
I think he's just been waiting his time. He's.
Yeah.
I think he's been kind of realistic about where he fits in the pecking order, and he's just been kind of waiting for his shot. And look, he's made the most of his times when he's been out there. Now, I think for Dallin, his time is coming. This year in 2024, it certainly seems like a time he's going to get some reps. And the reality is, if he can't beat out the guys on our roster, then it probably is time for him to move on, and that's probably best for all involved. But I think he'll have a nice role in 2024 and beyond. And I think he's a guy that I just think he came in with kind of like you came in, Kirk, where you were like, you didn't come in thinking, I'm Orlando Pace. I'm going to play the first week that I set foot on campus. Your goals were a little bit more long term, a little bit more focused on that. And you ended up an All American, 4-time beating Michigan captain, that type of thing. I think that's how Dallin views the thing. I don't think he's in a rush to get to the league. I think he wants to take kind of a more measured approach, and that's why in this era of reclassifying and 3 and done and stuff like that, it's almost kind of strange. And so we have kind of said, well, what's up with Dallin Hayden? I just think he's just he was a little young coming out of high school, and I think he was just waiting for him to mature. And when he gets to the NFL, he wants to be a big boy and ready to go. And I think he's just waiting his time.
Yeah, I think the guys that can take a long-term goal And again, everyone comes from different circumstances. Everybody comes from different backgrounds, different, socioeconomic things. Where sometimes a lot of these guys have pressure from their parents to, why isn't my boy playing? I gotta get him to the league. He gotta get paid. Don't let my boy get hit too many times. There's like this kind of thing that goes with parents sometimes. And like, I was fortunate that my mom, single mother, dad died young, not a lot of money, actually dirt poor. And, she never asked about any of that. It was just like, okay, let me put my nose down and grind. And again, when I committed to Ohio State, I did not want to play as a freshman. Literally did not. And again, it wasn't because I wasn't competitive. It wasn't because I wasn't whatever. But I was like, I had Shane Olivier, God rest his soul, who was a returning all Big Ten type tackle, great player. And I was on a team that was returning national champions, and they had the entire offensive line back. So there wasn't going to be a lot of meat on the bone if I said, "Oh, I want to play as a freshman," because the second team offensive line, my true freshman year, which was like Doug Daddish and TJ Downing and a bunch of these guys that were on the twos, they played like 6 minutes the entire. They played against Indiana and they played one drive against Washington. That was it, because all of our games, like we sucked on offense. Like with Craig Krenzel at quarterback and Lydell Ross at running back, like we were trash on offense. So we didn't blow teams out. So the backups never got into the games, even against Indiana. Like I think, we might have played 2, 3 drives, and then against Washington, then we get the last drive of the game. That was our opening game, but like we didn't blow teams out. So if I would have burnt my red shirt again back then, if you played one play, you burned your red shirt. I would have played 20 plays the entire season. And it's like, why would that ever make sense when I could come back the next year? Shane Olivier graduates, goes to the Chargers. We lost Shane, Alex, Bryce Bishop, Adrian Clark. Ivan Douglas had blood clots and had to medically retire. But it's like the whole line was cleaned out after 1 year. And Rob Sims ended up being our starting left tackle in '03 because of Ivan's blood clots. God rest his soul, too. I mean, God, we lost both of our tackles already early, which is terrible. But I, had a plan. I'm gonna get in here. I'm gonna grind. I had to gain weight because I was a lightweight. I was 280, and I had to get to probably about 305 to be competitive. But I was on the scout team grinding every week, and I was, I wasn't taking it easy on guys. And I tell these guys, I'm like, look, y'all want to play, man. If you're on scout team, like, don't take that as a break. Don't take it as a vacation. Don't cut no deals with them old guys. Like, go get after them, because if you go get after guys like Tim Anderson and Darian Scott and Will Smith and that kind of thing, they respect you way more than if you take it easy on them. So I was out there and I was on tilt. I was ready to go and I was getting after those guys. And against Wisconsin, when we actually lost that game, I got like scout team player of the week, which didn't mean anything after we lost. But I mean, I was getting after those guys. And like Jim Haycock came up to me and he's like, "Was that you?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he asked like what, because I had like whatever number the starting tackle was. He's like, "Well, were you that number?" And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "You gave a great look last week." And I was like, "Well, yeah, like I'm trying to play. Like I'm not trying to suck here." And so I was like, I was killing guys. And like that's kind of what those defensive coaches like Jim Haycock and Mark D'Antonio wanted. They wanted like guys to actually give real looks and not take it easy. Because some guys, they get in there and the guy across from him who's on defense, who's an All-American or All Big Ten, will be like, "Hey man, don't go hard on me today. Take it easy on me today. Go easy today." And I was like, man, and again, I'm not gonna say what I said because I don't want to get demonetized, but I was like, screw you guys, man. I'm coming after y'all. So you guys better eat your Wheaties. And again, those guys like that. And again, a lot of those times those guys will whoop me. I'm not like not God. Going against Will Smith is like, you better eat your Wheaties and say your prayers because he was really good, his first round pick. But I was still fighting him and battling him. And, Darian Scott would have an injury and I'd take care of him because he's my boy. But, D-Man had a really bad hand. So when I double team, I say, "Hey, D-Man, I'm gonna double team you right now, but just, hey, I'm gonna take it easy on you. I'm not gonna bang your hand because I know your hand's screwed up." And nobody knew that except for like us. And I tell them what the block was, and I say, "Hey, we'll make it look good for film, so it doesn't look bad." And and those guys love that because I take care of the guys that were hurt because some of those guys get banged up, and that's just how you become a good teammate. Is because you don't want to mess up some guy that's already been in the wars, and you're standing there on Saturdays drinking Gatorade. Alibi OHIO, thank you for the 5. If you have a question, toss that in there for me, and I will find it. Treasure the Torah again. The greatest super chatter in the history of Buckeye Scoop. I appreciate you, brother, for all you do. Thank you for the 100. What's up, my right hand man, Kirk? Hope all is well. Just got done cooking some stewed chicken and rice. Notice we're live. I wanted to chop it up with you, so it looks like we're dropping all the dead weight. Love you, brother. Go Bucks. Tora, I appreciate you, my man. If you ever come to Columbus, my email is barton.145@gmail. Holler at me. Let's go grab some lunch, some dinner, whatever. But again, your generosity is incredible. Again, it goes to our Pay It Forward campaign. So thank you so much for all you do. I hope you had a great new year. And again, I always appreciate you being on here and what you do. Yeah, we're dropping a lot of dead weight. We've got a lot of guys that are transferring out that weren't really good players. I mean, kids like Omari Abor, bad influence on the team, took off, went to SMU. Nobody misses him. Again, I don't want to get too much into the mud, but I have all of the dirt on most of the guys that left, and we didn't lose anybody of significance. Again, Julian Fleming, nice kid, but I'm I'm glad Julian Fleming hit the transfer portal because that opens up number 4 for JJ Smith. So, Ryan Day and Brian Hartline and our equipment guys, they don't have to mess around with JJ. They don't have to give him number 14 or number 24 or 34 or 44. Just hand that kid number 4. Give him a single digit. He's from Miami. He's the number 1 player in the country. Just give him his number that he wants. That's why we're all through high school. So the All-Star game, Julian Fleming took off. So it's a sign from God that a kid that's a superstar can actually walk in and get his exact number. Because that doesn't usually happen at Ohio State. Usually, especially if it's a single digit, there's always kids that want those bad. But give JJ number 4. Don't play around. Don't give him some stupid number. The kid deserves it, and we're gonna need him to be a big factor this year in 2024. D Sunny, thank you for the 5. Appreciate you. If Ryan Day got fired, I'm guessing he would be taking at least a $7 million pay cut. How much more pressure do college coaches have than regular 9 to 5 people? It kind of depends on your job. I don't like to compare that necessarily to like the working people because I feel like a lot of people work really hard. There's a lot of pressure. People got to feed their families. They got to take care of their kids, whatever. I think the biggest difference between college coaches and people that work a regular job is that if you screw something up at your regular job, the whole world doesn't hate you, and the whole world doesn't want you fired, and you don't have the kids making fun of your kids at their high school or their middle school or whatever. And that happens to these college kids. Like I remember Luke Fickle after that 2013 Michigan State game. Kids were vicious towards Landon, who's his oldest kid, who's he's a college football player now. But I mean, I remember back in 13, man, kids are very mean and they parrot what a lot of their dumb fathers say. And and those kids, like, they like to be nasty to like Landon. And again, he didn't deserve that because we gave up a lot of yardage versus Michigan State and whatever, but that's kind of what it is, and that's the life you sign up for. Because when you're a college football coach, man, you're in the public eye, and people live and die with Ohio State football. That's kind of what it is. Your thoughts on that, Nevada?
Yeah, no, I think it's a great point about the spouses and the kids and the relatives and stuff like that who definitely bear the brunt of it, especially if they have any type of presence on social media, because it's bad enough getting it in person at school or on Teams or at the market or whatever it is, but on social media, man, you're getting the worst of the worst, and people feel really brave being anonymous because they know that Luke Fickle isn't going to show up at their house with a question about what they said to your son or something like that. But no, look, it's a tough job. The idea
Mm-hmm.
of not knowing if you're going to be moving or if your kids are going to be going to a different school, or if you want to, look, you're excited, you get a promotion, but that means your kids now got to move across the country. I grew up as an Air Force brat, so that was just baked into the cake. So, and my dad wasn't getting any big raise. There was no big bonus. He wasn't becoming like the head coach of the Rams, and that's why we're moving to San Bernardino, California, or something like that.
Oh,
So you just kind of just rolled with it, and you made the best of it. But no, college coaching jobs right now are more complex than they've ever been with NIL and with the transfer portal. Just think about just little basic things like how tough can you be? Like the idea of Woody Hayes screaming at kids and stuff like that.
mm-hmm.
They wouldn't take it today. They'd just be like,
Yeah,
"See you later, coach. I'm gone. I'm out of here. I'm done."
no,
And it changes everything about football. Football's a tough game. All of us that played it, all of us that are over the age of 19 that are listening to this thing, all played with some tough coach that screamed at us and yelled at us and told us that water made us weak and everything else like that. That stuff wouldn't go today, and it doesn't go today. And I think, like I said, I think coaches have a unique challenge doing college, and that's why I'm so blessed that I feel so blessed that we have a 44-year-old Ryan Day as our head man, and I hope he's here for a very long time.
Yeah, and I think he's smart enough and progressive enough to figure out how to handle some of these kids. But some of these kids, they need to move on. Again, I mentioned a kid earlier that was a cancer in the locker room, and they got him out of there. And yeah, the portal's not all bad because, like, if your body is riddled with cancer, and you can cut that cancer out. You do it every time. Russ Stollard, thank you for the 5. If it's a close QB battle between Howard and Devin, would Ryan start Devin? I know we haven't seen Devin much, and I don't know what we have on him. I don't think so. I think Will Howard's the guy. I think he's going to treat him like the guy. I think that there's kind of a theater where you talk about, do we go with, if it's all even, do we take the younger guy who's got another year of eligibility? Or do we go with the guy who's a veteran, who we've got a lot more tape on, like Will Howard? I think if it's close, you start the older guy, and then Devin. Because Devin, he's not in as bad of a situation as a lot of people would think. Because I know that we've gotten into this hyper 3 and out mode because of what's happened with the last 3 guys, and again, that's insanely abnormal to the point where it's not really productive outside of financially. Like for Dwayne Haskins to leave after 3 years and be a first round pick, fantastic move for his family and for him and his pocketbook. But could he have used a 4th year at Ohio State to become more well rounded and more mature? Yeah. And again, I think that, his, obviously, he had untimely passing, but, he got cut early in his career with the Redskins because of immaturity. And that was an issue. And again, it's nothing against Dwayne, and God rest his soul, but, that's the kid that if he came back for a 4th year, probably wins the Heisman Trophy. And he's probably the first pick in the draft just because he'd have a chance to really develop and be great. But, it kind of is what it is. He'd have an extra year with Ryan Day. Now, obviously, that would have cost us Justin Fields, but, that 19 group with Olave and some of those guys, we had Garrett Wilson. If Haskins is thrown there and he shows a little bit more maturity, he probably been a captain as a 4th year junior. It would have helped him. But again, like having Haskins go after 3 years and Fields going after 3 years and Stroud going after 3 years, and the insane level of success that those guys had getting drafted as high as they did, I think that it's something that I think it dampens the reality of what a quarterback can do, just because the level was just so high with those 3. So then when Kyle McCord shows up and he's a junior and he's got 1 year left after this year and he's not as phenomenal as those guys were where they were Heisman Trophy finalists, it kind of dampens it. And I think Will Howard is going to be held to the same standard as Stroud and Fields, but I think he can handle it. So again, I just want to see who's the most productive guy. I hope Devin stays post spring ball because again, he's going to have a battle with Will Howard. He's going to have to start at a lot of places. I think that he's got a lot of ability. Again, a lot of people that I really trust who are really smart, who are in the Woody Hayes, said that he should have been the starter this year. But that being said, does he want to go start somewhere next year? Because, when he gets the news that Will Howard is coming, and they told him that before the bowl game, by the time he would have hit the portal, it's kind of like musical chairs where a lot of positions are already spoken for. And, you see a guy like Malachi Nelson, who was the #1 player in the country last year, ends up at Boise State. And Kyle McCord, who went 11-1 at Ohio State as a starter, ends up at Syracuse. So, Devin's really got to figure out what's the best move for him and what are his realistic options. Because, if you're Devin and you've started, one game and you didn't finish it longer than a quarter, who's really going to push all their chips into the middle of the table to take you as their starter? But again, I think that the competition will be ferocious. I think that, I know that Devin isn't scared of Will Howard. I know that Devin thinks he's better than Will Howard. So again, this is the time to start getting after it. You get that weight room, you get those mat drills going, you get those 6 a.m. workouts going, you get the winter conditioning going. They measure everything you do in there, every win, loss, everything you do. So, Devin's going to start chipping away at that and then get ready to go for spring ball. Your thoughts on that, Nevada?
Yeah, I mean, it's the Will Howard show, in my opinion. It's 2024 national championship. That's why you bring in a guy with 50 starts and career passing leader at Kansas State. And for Devin, look, worst case, as you said, if you don't get the job, Will Howard's a 1 year proposition. He's not 2 years. He's not 3 years. By definition, the most he'll be here is 1 season. And then you roll back out there and you try to start the next year. And if you're not good enough by that point, then you're just not good enough, and then you
Yeah.
do whatever you're going to do, or move on with life, or go play at Utah State, or whatever the scenario may lay out for you. But I think that's probably the most But kids are funny. You don't know what it is. I think Devin's the kid that's going to stay and fight. But if he didn't, I wouldn't blame him. Just like I don't blame McCord. I think all these guys are making the decisions that they think's best for them. But I'd be shocked if it was anybody but Will Howard in 2024. And I'm a big Devin Brown guy, but at the end of the day, Will Howard's a horse, and I think that's the horse we're riding in 2024.
Yeah, I mean, I think Will Howard's a massive upgrade over Kyle McCord or Devin Brown, and I think that Ryan Day thinks that as well because again, he's upsetting the apple cart to bring him in. I got some JJ Smith on for you guys' entertainment right now, but when you bring in somebody through the portal, it's not always just like some easy decision. Well, this guy's a little bit better. It's like you could potentially lose your whole room. I mean, you could have Lincoln Keenel's transfer, Devin Brown, and that's something that Ryan has to weigh. And I think that the way that he likes what Will Howard can do, it opens up the offense. He's a horse. He's a cold weather quarterback. He's a guy that's won all-time leading touchdown guy in Kansas State. And again, like I said, there have been some people that have, kind of canned Will Howard or poo-pooed on Will Howard. But, for a college quarterback, I mean, he's really good. Now, I mean, people say, well, he didn't go to the draft this year. What's he doing? Well, if you get 1 year with Ryan Day and he can catapult you into the first round, which he could do, then I think it's all worth coming back and throwing to J.J. Smith and Ennis and Tate and Emeka Egbuka and Jelani Thurman, G. Scott, Trey Henderson, James Peoples. There's a lot of weaponry. And honestly, like I just, when I show you our schedule, it's not ultra daunting just because, we got to go beat Oregon. We got to beat Michigan. We got Michigan at home. There's a very high likelihood they're going to have a new head coach, new staff. They could be in sanctions. They could be in hot water. So I think a lot of these juniors, like, I want to go out with senior day and beat Michigan, and it'll be a weaker Michigan team because they're not going to have 44 seniors like they do this year. So a lot of this next year, we're going to have a lot of kind of that age, which we haven't had the last few years because we've been so young, and a lot of our really good players have gone pro after 3 years. And that's a real thing. I know people think it's crazy, but I remember when I was a young kid as a redshirt freshman, we played Iowa in 2004. Their whole front, we were all sophomores and juniors up front on the D line and O line. And then they were all seniors. So they whooped us pretty good. And that next year, we were all, sophomores and juniors and seniors and whatever in 2005. And then Iowa was all freshmen and sophomores. And we massacred them at the Horseshoe. You go watch that game in 2005, and it was one of the great get-back games because we got killed and it was disgusting. But then we got them back in the shoe and we beat them pretty good. Got another super chat. Brian Wilson, thanks for the 5. Any intel on why Seth McLaughlin left Bama immediately after the Rose Bowl? Seems like an odd move for him. Well, I think that some of it was just, the performance, the fan base, whatever. But sometimes guys just want to change. They want a little bit of a change of scenery. And again, I spent, my 2 hours while I was eating dinner watching his Georgia film. And his Georgia film is really good. I mean, he's going against the 0-nose from Georgia, who's a really good player, 78. And he's stopping him. He's moving him in the running game. And I was like, this is a good player. And I was texting somebody at Ohio State, and I was like, I really like this clip, man. This kid's pretty good. This isn't Akron. This isn't Mount Union. This isn't Louisiana Lafayette. This isn't Vic Cutler. This is like a real dude. Started at Bama. And he's like, yeah, he's a good player, smart guy, excited to be here. And, sometimes like a change of scenery doesn't hurt these guys. Like I think that he's excited to learn from Justin Fry. For whatever reason, he wanted to leave Bama, and it's to our benefit. Your thoughts of that, Nevada? Why did Seth McLaughlin leave Bama right after the Rose Bowl?
Well, I mean, if you believe people close to him, the environment was not a positive one for him. And that environment includes the fan base, the coaching staff, the situation he was on the team. He felt like he needed a change of scenery. And I don't know if it's more than that, but it happened really quick. It happened within hours of that end of that Michigan game, and advantage Ohio State because I think we're getting a terrific play. There's no way that you can go watch him play against Georgia, and now this year's Georgia team, isn't one of the all-time great college football teams. They're a really good team. I mean, they just dismantled Florida State. They lost one game this year by 3 points to Alabama, and that's Georgia's Georgia, defending national champion the last 2 seasons, and he dominated. He was tough at the point of attack, really controlled those Alabama guys up front, and did some terrific things. And he's played in some absolutely humongous football games through the last few seasons. So I couldn't be more excited. Whatever the circumstances of how he ended up here, he did, and I think it's just another one of those. We talked about 2024 being a special year. I had not factored into it that maybe we'll get the starting center from Alabama to become the starting center for Ohio State. So, as good as I was feeling about 2024, I feel even better now that Seth's part of the equation.
Totally agree. Cordero Jackson next to the 5. The Cheaters up north got lucky all season. Agree. Has not faced one team with a great 2 elite QB. Also, why would anyone want to play for them next year? It's a great question. I think they got lucky. I think that we were thrown at the end zone at the end of the game. Our quarterback wasn't good enough to do it. Again, I thought our quarterback play let us down all year. I think you have to have a difference maker at quarterback, and Kyle McCord is not a difference maker. He's a guy that won't get drafted next year after his, he has a terrible year at Syracuse. That's why Ryan Day wanted to go get Will Howard. That's why Ryan Day, if he, again, you say whatever you want about Kirk. Kirk's a hater. Kirk doesn't know anything. He doesn't know quarterback play. But Ryan Day does. And Ryan Day, when he was demanded by Derek McCord to be the starting quarterback with Kyle, he said no. But Will Howard, on the other hand, he's like, oh, I'll take that all day. Let me look at that production, look at his size, his speed, his raw tools. Like blows, Kyle McCord out of the water. And again, where did Kyle end up? Not Nebraska. Nebraska turned him down for Dylan Real. He was all in, jumping into bed with Nebraska, and then the Reolas called up and said, hey, you guys got some money? And they're like, ooh, yeah. And you're only a freshman? Ooh, yeah. Like, Kyle McCord for 1 year. So then he ends up at Syracuse, which is the worst program in America. And they lost like 45-0 to South Florida in the bowl game. And have fun. There's no Marvin in the Meckup. There's no Cade Stover. There's no good O-line. There's no Big Ten. There's no massive talent advantage. And I think Kyle's going to get killed next year. And again, it's going to be one of the worst decisions of his life, but he didn't want to compete. And again, that's his fault, And then when he hits the free market, like his market cratered and he ends up at a really bad program with a new coach. And God bless you. I hope it turns out okay. But I just don't think that he's the guy. D Sunny, thank you for the 5. Guys like Trey, Burke, and JT could have been NFL starters next year. Could guys like that have huge leaps this late? It could be a dominant team. Nevada, I'll let you take that before I lay this one down because I think I've got a really good answer on this.
Well, look, all 3 of those guys could end up going pro. We don't think that. I would have thought that was a lock for sure, halfway through the season. That's not what we're hearing now, but so I don't want to spike the ball too quickly on any of those because we could get an announcement within hours that any 1, 2, or all 3 of those guys are going to the NFL. But if they come back to Ohio State, watch out. It's already going to be a fun season, and the great thing about guys like that coming back, I talked about.
Nevada muted himself. I'll get him back in here. I'll start. Trey is the guy who has massive upside. I think that his grade wasn't great, probably a 3rd-round grade. And if he puts together a great season, then he can get up into that Bijan, Jahmyr Gibbs type tier where he's a 1st-rounder. Nevada, you are back. You were saying...
Yeah, I was just talking about, the beautiful thing about the Cotton Bowl was the Cotton Bowl kind of clarified a lot of things. Had we won a 24-10 sleepy type of game and Devin Brown was just good enough or guys were just good enough to do it, then where are we? It would have been nice to have that trophy and we get that big, silver thing of cotton and we hand it out at the halftime of the Rutgers Ohio State football game and everybody yells and Ryan Day runs out there with his rosy cheeks and holds it up and stuff like that. But where are we as a friend, as a team? Because you don't get Will Howard in that situation. You're thinking Devin Brown's good enough for guys. Maybe that's kind of the ending that kind of sends them down the road. But now with the way that the season ended, for guys that have any type of feeling about, hey, I want to go out on the right note. I want to go out on a good note. I want to go out on a high note. This may bring them back. And you combine that with an aggressive Ohio State NIL program, some NFL draft grades that haven't been as rosy, and the chances of a 2024 season with a lot of guys returning. And we talked about how close that class is and how much those guys talk. And look how many of those guys have already announced that they're coming back. Um, so I think for guys like that, they could have great 2024s. They could move themselves up the draft board, and they could finish their careers at Ohio State the right way. And I think that's important to a lot of them. And again, I think for us, it all points towards a really exciting 2024.
Yeah, I think when you look at I'm gonna put this back up on the board. D Sunny asks, again, I appreciate you, my man. You're in here every night. You talk about Trey, Denzel, JT. I mean, it's all about NIL at this point. Honestly, I think these guys all want to stay. I think that the NIL packages have to step up. I think, and some of these guys have to be a little bit more realistic with the money asked for. Like, I heard JT's number, and it was insane. It was literally twice as much as 1870 had raised, in their year and a half of existence. So JT came back with a crazy number. And I've got the number written down. I don't want to say it out loud, but he's got to be realistic. I mean, they're just like, that's like, X amount of dollars per sack. And that's, we're not going to drain, we're not going to go into the hole because we need to get you back. But some of these guys, they ask for the moon and hope to land among the stars, which I totally get. But, a guy like, Trey's got a huge year. I mean, he's got to prove he can stay healthy. Again, that's his biggest knock. He's not durable. He's been hurt, and it's been real injuries. But again, it doesn't matter if they're real pain, plantar fasciitis tear, knee injury, ribs, whatever it is. Like, you have to get through a season, as healthy as possible, which I think he can do. And if he does that, he'll be, Doak Walker winner and run for probably 1,500 yards and get, hopefully 40 catches and, get loose in the passing game a little bit. Denzel had a miraculous turnaround. Again, this is why you guys need to pay attention to us, because we're very even keel. We're very, subjective. We watch a lot of tape. Everyone, all of the morons that are on this Ohio State beat and some of the fringe lunatics that cover Ohio State all wanted Tim Walton fired. They all said he sucked. He's trash. Let's get rid of him last year. And I was like, I think he's pretty good. Jalen Ramsey thinks he's good. And Jalen Ramsey's forgotten more about corner than Auburn now. But Jalen Ramsey swears by this guy. So let's give him another year. So he's had a monster recruiting class. He's got a bunch of future guys committed. They all love him. Ryan Day made him the passing game back end kind of pseudo coordinator. So again, listen to people that are actually intelligent. And most of these sites, I listen to the stuff they say, and it's just so bad that I feel bad that anybody listens to it and they get convoluted. But that's why you guys have us. And JT is the guy that didn't have the year that he wanted. He had the huge Penn State game. But I think that something that has been promised to him and Jack Sawyer is that they're going to let these guys get loose a little bit in the pass rush next year. Because again, the last 6 games, they got loose a little bit. And all of a sudden, and it wasn't some accident, all of a sudden the production went crazy because they let these guys get after it a little bit. So I think that's a huge deal for these guys. They both want to get to doubles. Doubles means 10 sacks, double digits. That's their goal. If those guys go to 10 sacks, they're first team All-Americans. They get their Buckeye tree, and they're first round picks. So they have a lot on the line. And again, you have to remember, like, you talk about huge leaps. Like, these guys are gonna be 4th-year guys now, like Jack and JT, Tyleek, and not everybody that they go against is going to be a 4th-year guy or 5th-year guy. Like, a lot of these guys they're going against are going to be like Michigan's going to have a very young offensive line next year. A lot of these teams are going to have young offensive lines next year. So now our guys are the bullies. They're the old guys. They're the old heads. They've got old man strength, and they're going to dominate. So that's why I'm excited to see this group up front. And then our back 7. You get Denzel back, and you get Davison. You got Cody Simon. And then whoever the will is, if it's CJ Hicks, if it's Sonny Styles, if it's Gabe Powers, it's going to be exciting to see. Again, there's a lot of competition, a lot of these spots, not a ton of open spots, but I know guys are going to be fighting for it. You get Denzel back, Jordan Hancock, and Davison Gnosa. That's the best set of corners in the country. Better than Bama, better than Georgia. So there's a lot to be excited about. So, people that are dumb don't understand what's going on at Ohio State, but I'd be all in for 2024 because I'm really excited about it. Coach D, thanks for the 10. Appreciate you. Kirk in Nevada. Do you guys think DBU is back and we have the best secondary in the country? And realistically, how many games do you think the Bucks will lose in 24? I think DBU really hasn't gone anywhere. We might have had a little blip, but if you go back to what, God, it's hard for me because, like, I mean, even if you want to go all the way back to the olden days in the mid 90s, I mean, we had Sean Springs and Antoine Winfield and Damon Moore and Mike Doss and, I mean, Chris Gamble. Like, it's never really left. Kerry Combs had a nice run of corners when he had Marshawn and he had Garrett Conley and he had Denzel Ward. And so, I mean, it's never really left. Like, that's the funny thing is, like, people, they want to throw all these flowers on guys because they, oh, well, DBU's here and we got good corners. And I'm like, dude, like, where have you been your whole life? Like, dude, we had Sean Springs and Antoine Winfield at one point playing corner at Ohio State at the same time. And those are two guys that are fringe Hall of Fame guys, especially Antoine. So I think DBU's back. I think that, again, it's not like it was something that was created since Urban got here or since Ryan Day got here. It's something that's been going on for a long time. But Ohio State's got a really rich tradition of defensive back play, and again, I love that Tim Walton is the cornerbacks coach. He's a guy that played here. He knows the culture. I think that the players love him. They gravitate to him. He's a guy that's really hard on these guys. But again, Jalen Ramsey. Again, I'll put the clip on our YouTube. Said that he's the guy that taught him how to be a pro and taught him how to be a great corner. And Jalen Ramsey's arguably one of the 5 best corners who's ever lived. So, and realistically, I don't think they're going to lose any games. I think we'll go out to Oregon. We'll shock the world with Dylan Gabriel. With our running quarterback and running the ball, I think we have a very good chance to beat Oregon at Oregon. So, you got to run the ball on the road. You got to play great defense. Our defense will be, on paper, the best defense in the country. And I think our running game is going to be magnificent with Will Howard and Trey Henderson. Nevada, your thoughts on DBU and how many games do you think the Bucks will lose in 24?
Well, let me just ask you a question first on DBU.
Sure.
Can you, and you may know the answer to this question, and you may not know the answer to this question, but it's okay. But I've always wondered this. How did Ohio State not offer Antoine Winfield Jr.?
Because we've got stupid people in our personnel department.
I mean,
is that fair?
That one. I mean,
his name's literally Antoine Winfield Jr. And Antoine, people don't realize how good Twan was. Twan was one of the best players in school history, pound for pound, probably the best player in school history. But and his son's a guy that should have made the Pro Bowl this year. He's a superstar. He's going to be a free agent. He'll sign for if he doesn't get franchised by the Bucks, he'll be one of the highest paid free agents in the NFL this year. But stupidity, I guess. I mean, he's from Akron. I mean, it's not like he's some guy that is from Texas or Georgia or wherever, Minnesota, because Twan lived there or whatever. Like, he's from Akron. So again, that was just stupidity by our coaching staff. But your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I that one was always a head scratcher because that one to me just screamed for an offer, and I never understood why they didn't offer him. And then he went out and balled out in college, and then he went to the NFL. And yeah, he's a pretty decent NFL player now. That one was always weird. Now, how many games are we going to lose next year? I mean, it'll be interesting to see what Vegas sets as the over/under on wins for next year for Ohio State. But I mean, the number's not going to be crooked. It's going to be a 0 or a 1 in terms of losses for Ohio State. And, I think people are onto that, though. I think Ohio State will be favored in every game they play, with maybe the exception that the Oregon game might be a pick 'em. It'd be interesting to see what the futures are on that. But no, Ohio State's going to be a pretty big favorite in every game that they play. Certainly, even obviously against Michigan, at Penn State, which is always tough. But hours asked, my dude. And I think 2024 is going to set up to be a big year. We're veteran at all the key spots. Like you said, we've got the old man strength. We've got the veteran leadership. And we've got a defense that was absolutely nasty this year in the second year of the Knowles system, now in the third year of the Knowles system, and with eight starters back, 9 starters back, or whatever it is. So, no, I think we're going to be filthy and very tough to beat.
I totally agree. McLaren 123 1000. Thank you for being a Scoop Ultra member, and thank you for all of your generosity. You've been awesome. Giving these super chats. Thanks for the 20. Hey, Kirk in Nevada, love the show. Appreciate that so much, my man. Again, we don't take any of you guys for granted. We know that you guys are the smartest people in the fan base because you guys tune in every night, and we try to bring the heat for you every night. Sometimes it's a little tough because this is a question that I looked at, and this is gonna be a toughie. But sorry if this was discussed earlier, but I was able to start watching. Who would your favorites for OC and play caller be? Well, for play caller, if you put a gun to my head and said, Kirk, I'm going to blow your brains out unless you name who the play caller is next year. I'm going to say Ryan Day because that's what it's been since 19 and it hasn't changed. Now, again, has there been an edict issued from on high to make to go get a new OC? Yes, but Ryan knows that this is his this is his OK corral. This is he's got to have a big year this year. So if he's not comfortable with any of the guys that he interviews, then he might be the play caller. Now, that's not the solution he wants. He wants to be comfortable and have a good rapport with whoever he hires as his OC. And, that OC potentially could bring in one or two of his own guys to supplant, potentially an offensive line coach, potentially a running backs coach, whatever. But I think it's going to be really fascinating to see what goes on with the coaching firings that are going on in the NFL tonight and tomorrow, and who would be available. Because again, I think that this is a big move for Ryan. I mean, Ryan does not want to run the offense again. He needs to get a guy who's like Jim Knowles who can run the offense. And it's a total cop out, and I'm saying it out loud, but it's really hard to speculate on who the play caller is going to be because, again, when we hired a play caller last time in 2016, we hired some guy named Ryan Day who'd been fired by the 49ers. Nobody had ever heard of him. Nobody was excited about him. He'd coached Blaine Gabbert and Colin Kaepernick, and their offense sucked. And Chip Kelly got fired after one season in San Francisco because they were so bad. And when these coaches sign deals in the NFL, they're signing 3, 4, 5 year deals. So to get fired after one season somewhere means that owner has to pay a buyout for however many years are left in the contract, and they're going to pay the assistants, and so you got to be exquisitely bad. So again, when Chip Kelly was at the Woody Hayes, in 2016, I remember it like it was yesterday. There was a lot of speculation that Chip Kelly is going to be our new offensive coordinator under Urban Meyer, and I was just like, this is going to be a dream come true. This is going to be amazing. And then we hired Ryan Day, and I was like, what's a Ryan Day? I've never heard of a Ryan Day. And then I looked at his resume and I was like, ew. I was like, he's been at, Boston College and the Eagles, and, the Eagles chased him out of there, after like 1 or 2 years when when Chip Kelly was the head coach of the Eagles. And then he went to San Francisco for a year. And so his resume wasn't really that shiny, but it turned out to be pretty good. And Chip Kelly vouched for him hard, and Urban hired him. And same thing with Tom Herman. Like, nobody had ever heard of Tom Herman before Urban hired him. So it's a cop out, but I think that the guy that we hire as OC is going to be a guy that probably won't be a brand name. It won't be some guy that like, oh my God, we got that guy. It'll be some guy that we haven't heard of, who Ryan Day likes and he interviewed, and they've got similar philosophies and similar mindsets as to how they want to run the offense and the coaching staff. And I think that, if he goes with a younger guy, that guy's probably not going to have the yank to totally redo the coaching staff. You get an older guy who wants $3 million to be the OC, he's going to bring some of his own guys, his own line coach, his own running backs coach. You want to have a couple of your lieutenants in there when you're a new OC. But that's my thoughts on it. And again, that's a cop out, just because I think that the guy that is out there isn't known yet. And I think that after this coaching convention gets rolling, we're going to have a lot more smoke on that. But your thoughts on that, Nevada?
Yeah, look, this is the show where we'll tell you when we have it, and we'll also tell you when we don't have it, and we don't have it. And what I can tell you exactly how I'm working this. I'm working through all the agents. I'm working through all the agents to find out. And what I've been told is that Ryan is not only examining college candidates, but he's examining pro candidates as well. The pro candidates are now just becoming available as the regular season's over, and it'll be interesting to see what names go. I know that they're on a compressed time. They're on a timetable of days, not weeks, as we've talked about before, because they've got these incoming freshmen. They want to get these moves in place soon. So I know this stuff's all going to be happening fast and first, but I do not have the names for it. But I'm actively digging as we speak. I'm literally furiously texting people as we're sitting here on this podcast trying to get the right names.
Yeah, and like you have to understand, like a lot of times, that's the most delicate. It's like defusing a bomb, is getting the right names for who's where and who's going what and who's whatever. Because a lot of times Ryan Day, especially if a guy's under contract, doesn't directly contact somebody who's got a contract, and the agents talk to the agents, and so there's always that plausible deniability. Like when Urban Meyer became the head coach at Ohio State, he famously said at the press conference, "Well, I didn't talk to Ohio State until after the Monday after the Michigan game." I'm like, come on, dude. Like, really? Like, you talked to him the first time they went after Michigan? No, the contract had already been written. All of the terms have been set. All of the knickknacks that you wanted in the contract are already done. All you had to do is, like, you cross there's not a T in your Meyer, but dot the I, there's not an I in Meyer either. But you just had to make sure that you looked right on the contract when you were signing it. But that's what happens when these agents are talking to agents. It's like the peoples talk to the peoples, and then the parties can say, Ryan Day can say, "Oh, I never talked to Mark D'Antonio. Oh, I never talked to Will Muschamp," which he absolutely did in 2021 after that Oregon debacle. And we had that to the point where people that are really high up in the OTAs said, "How on earth did you find out about that?" And I was like, well, we got good sources, and the agents are the best sources, and it worked out really good for us because that was a lot of cred, and Ohio State did not like it. Stephen Wood, thank you for the 5. Appreciate you guys as always. If you have a question, toss that in the chat. Tony Turley, thank you for the 20. Have you heard Willie Korn from Liberty mentioned as a possible OC? Yeah, but that's going to be a tough pull, man. Liberty has a lot of money, and they love their football program. They lost Hugh Freeze to Auburn. This is a guy I think they'd pay a lot of money to keep. I think he's kind of like one of those pipe dreamish guys, kind of like Chad Morris was at Clemson in 2012. And I think that they'd pony up to keep this guy. But if we got him, it would be a grand slam. I think he's the guy that would probably want to bring one or two of his coaches with him. But Nevada, is it worth speculating on Willie Korn from Liberty? Because I don't see it. But again, I could be dead wrong.
Yeah, it would be one of those shocking names to me, just for all the reasons you talked about in terms of how, how highly Liberty thinks of him, how much Liberty's paying, what they'll do to keep him. And like I said, I just, while I want this to be a splash hire, like you said, while you want it to be the Chad Morris, Chip Kelly, Cliff Kingsbury type of hire that's going to come in and say, I think it's going to be a Tom Herman, Ryan Day type of what, who's that,
Yeah.
but we'll see. I mean, like I said, I could get a text in the next 15 minutes and I'd be like, oh, wow, hadn't thought about that big name. Wow, that's going to go. And we'll break that and we'll break it down and we'll talk about it. But I just think it's going to be more of a lesser known person. I think that fits Ryan Day's personality better, given the way that he's kind of configured his staffs up till now. I don't think he's a splash hire type of guy. And I reserve the right to change my mind if it's wrong.
Yeah, I mean, Willie Korn is he's 34. So, I mean, you got to remember, like, for Ryan Day, this is the year that could make or break his career. If this thing hits the toilet, we get routed by Oregon, lose to Michigan again, the new AD doesn't love him and cans him. Like, do you want to put the fate into the hands of a 34-year-old? He better be Sean McVay. He better be the whiz kid guru genius that you dreamed that he'd be as an OC, the wizard. But he's really young. And again, we've got a really young staff already. I mean, we got Keenan Bailey, who's like 25 years old. We got Corey Dennis, who's barely 30. We have one of the youngest staffs in college football. So you got to get, a little bit more gray hair. I think you got to get some more experience, fresh ideas. Again, like Georgia brought in Jeff Munkin. He did wonders for their offense. He went to Baltimore. Baltimore's probably the best team in the NFL right now. That's the kind of guy I think you need, is like a real guy that can be, because it's hard to hire, just from an age standpoint, a 34-year-old who's never coached at a major school. He's coached at Charleston Southern, Coastal Carolina, and Liberty. And you're going to make that guy the head coach of your offense when he's never been at a real school, and his school just lost by 70 points to Oregon in the bowl game. So I think it's got to be someone from a real school, SEC, NFL, ACC, Big Ten. It's hard to hand the keys to the 34-year-old when, frankly, Ryan probably knows he's way better than this guy. And I don't know how long this guy would hold the play sheet before Ryan would snatch it out of his hands. So, but that's a great question. Appreciate you, Tony. As always, thank you, brother. D. Sunny, thank you for the 5. Can you give us any info on why Urban didn't take the Texas job? I can. Nevada, do you want to take a crack at this, or do you want me to give the whole scoop?
No, you are the resident expert on the Texas thing. So anything that I would say, but before we get into that really quick, because I just want to just say one thing about young coaches. Did you see that all the coaches on that 2013 Washington Huskies footballs, they showed that graphic. I think last night on one of the games. Did you see all the coaches that were on that staff?
The Huskies or the Redskins?
I think it was the Huskies.
Who was on it?
It was like Sean. It was like Sean
That's the
McVay.
that's the
Was
Redskins.
was was it Redskins? I mean
Yeah, that's
McVay,
it's Mike Shanahan, Kyle Shanahan, McVay, McDaniels from Miami. The guy,
LaFleur.
yeah, well, for the guy who's the OC for the Texans. That's why they showed us because the OC from the Texans was like a water boy
Yeah.
on that staff,
I
and
mean,
they got,
I'm sorry, but I just couldn't believe that. I mean, it's one thing to have some of the good young coaches, but like literally like all those guys in the same staff. But anyway, I get to D Sonny's question about Texas and Urban, but that was amazing.
well, I've known Urban for a very long time, and I love Urban Meyer. I love Shelly Meyer. I love Nikki Meyer, Gigi, Nate, the whole family, the whole crew. I've known Corey Dennis for a long time. He's married to Nikki. Again, when we had a youth camp in 2012, Urban put Nate, who's a seventh grader, on my flag football team because he said I would coach him up the best. So again, me and Urban are really tight. I mean, Urban was the first guy to offer me a scholarship. I never forgot that. He believed in me when nobody else did. And he was a scrub Bowling Green coach back then. He wasn't the Florida Gator guy that massacred us and the Utah guy that went undefeated. He was a young guy at Bowling Green. And we really hit it off. And then so when he came in and retained me, super tight. We're still super tight. He'll probably come on the podcast the next few weeks. But that being said, the Texas thing was something that he was really interested in. I think that the biggest thing, because again, Urban is as conscientious and as intelligent as any coach that's ever lived. He was very concerned about his legacy here, and he knows if he takes that Texas job, Ohio State fans will instantly hate him because he had taken Corey Dennis, he had taken Quinn Ewers, so that would have been his two starting blocks at Texas. And the Regents were at his house. They were offering him the sun, the moon, the stars, basically like a blank contract where you could fill in whatever amount of money you wanted for as long as you wanted, and it was ready to go. Now, do I think he ever had super interest in Texas? Maybe for a little bit, but Jacksonville called, get Trevor Lawrence, NFL, try that out. He became really good friends with Jimmy Johnson when he was at Fox, and Jimmy obviously went from the Hurricanes to the Cowboys, had massive success, and he's one of the few guys that won a national championship and won a Super Bowl, and I think that's kind of what Urban thought. He's like, if I go to Jacksonville, I get Trevor Lawrence right off jump. And obviously that thing crashed into the side of the mountain, but I think he did it more to get Tom Herman fired. And eventually they moved on Tom Herman. Tom was the guy that betrayed Urban. And again, I have, Zach hates Tom, Urban hates Tom. I've never had any cross things with Tom, but I'm just telling you that's kind of how it went down. And Urban, when Urban is, it's like if Tom Herman's sitting in his house in Austin, Urban being out there with those regents and those oil guys and all that money, and they can potentially get Urban Meyer, who's one of the two Mick Jagger coaches, the way Nick Saban is and Urban Meyer is. It's like having Godzilla standing outside your house, ready to breathe blue fire on you and light you into smoldering ashes. But Urban ended up not taking it. I think he used a little bit of his leverage. He used it as kind of a get back after he was betrayed. And frankly, I think that that's kind of what he is. That's why some of these guys that want to cross Urban, I'm like, have fun with that. Because I love Urban. He's been nothing but amazing to me. But he's Michael Corleone, man. And I'm telling you, Michael Corleone, you guys saw at the end of Godfather, you see Mo Green get shot in the massage table right in the eye, and that's kind of what it is. Like, you don't want to cross the Godfather. And these guys that they cross Urban, and then all of a sudden they can't get a good job in college football. It's because they've kind of been blackballed. He's a very powerful guy, and I love him to death. I think he's he earned it, and he isn't scared to wield it. And he's a guy that he did magnificent work for Ohio State, raising our standard and raising our program, and basically demanding that our Ohio State, which is notoriously cheap as an athletic department, makes football a real priority, because we weren't under Tressel. Again, we had nice stuff, but with Urban, it was like, no, we're gonna have the best stuff. Big difference. So that's kind of went down with Texas, and again, that's what really happened. And then he ends up going to Jacksonville. Obviously, we know what happened there. It was a disaster, but he saw Trevor Lawrence, and if in the NFL, if you can get a franchise quarterback and get him on a 5-year rookie contract, you've got a shot. So he rolled the dice and came up snake eyes, but he's good. He works 60 days a year now, makes $2 million with Fox, and loves his job and gets to go play Augusta every month, and kind of is what it is. So, anything to add to that, Nevada?
No, that was pretty expansive and spot on. So
That's why
yes,
we're that's why we're the scoop. That's why you guys tune in. We
yes.
appreciate you guys. Stephen Wood, thanks for the deuce. Is there so interest in Tackett Curtis? I think there is. I think it might be waning a little bit just because I think that with Wisconsin closing on him, there's a lot more inertia to start early for Tackett. Again, that offense, that linebacker room with Cody Simon coming back, it's pretty full. I mean, you got Cody Simon, potentially moving Sonny Styles down, CJ Hicks, Gabe Powers. We got some of these young guys coming in. Like it's pretty hard. Tackett's a guy that I loved, but he went to the wrong school his first year and he played a lot, but he played on a terrible defense and he has some nice statistics, but they're all kind of empty, airy statistics. If you have great stats, but you play on a terrible defense, like, does it really mean anything? It's kind of like garbage time yards for a quarterback. Again, they're cute and they look great on the back of a football card, but is that really something that you're going to be proud of? But I don't know if he wants to play for the best school or if he just wants to play. Because if he wants to play, Wisconsin's where he should come. If he wants to play for Jim Knowles and James Laurinaitis, he should come here. But again, with Sonny Styles potentially moving down to Will, Cody Simon playing Mike, and then you've got CJ and you've got Gabe Powers and you've got whoever else. Like it's a crowded room, man, and it's tough to get on there. I mean, CJ Hicks is a 5-star guy that the whole universe wanted, Bama, Georgia, everybody, and he hasn't gotten on the field because we had not Storm, we had Tommy and we had Steel Chambers, and then you had Cody back in those both positions up. So CJ, I mean, he played a little bit in the bowl game, but he hasn't really done anything through 2 years of his career. Your thoughts on Tackett Curtis, Nevada?
Yeah, no, still in play, still very much in play. But like you said, Wisconsin's definitely a player as well. But we'll see. I think that's going to be clarified as James is named a full-time coach here shortly, and when he does, I think we'll probably have a much better idea where we land with Tackett Curtis.
Yeah. And just so you guys know, Shuttle Joe has been sent to the cornfield, so he's banned for good. Appreciate you tuning in, but you're an idiot. So if you guys ever have any issues in our chat, please put that in our deal, and we will get rid of those guys. But that being said, Nevada, good show. Anything you want to touch on as we wrap this thing up?
Now, do not want to beg for likes, but I know some of you probably watch the show and you're probably like, oh, I didn't even realize what that thumbs up thing there, Jobber is. But if you want to bang that thumbs up before you leave, that stuff really helps us out, and it's a big help. Now, we have a viewing party tomorrow. Tomorrow at 4:30 my time, 7:30 your time. We're gonna get together. We're gonna watch Washington rain down the purple madness on the Wolverines and win the national championship, and we're gonna have some fun with that. So if you get a chance, tune in. We're gonna have the return of Tinkerbuck. We're gonna have lots of fun. We're gonna have a 3.5-hour chat, and hopefully we end better than the Alabama game, which wasn't great. And the party was great, just the ending kind of stunk. And let's root for a better ending tomorrow night.
I totally agree. Well, appreciate you guys tuning in as always. If you guys want to support the channel, please leave us a like on your way out the door. That is huge. Also, click subscribe and also click the little alert bell. Those are huge for this channel. So appreciate you guys tuning in as always. A little Sunday Night Football going on. I hope your NFL teams made the playoffs. I know that a lot of our Brownies fans probably weren't sad because you saw what Sam Laporta did with the Detroit Lions, tore his knee up. So you got to watch the guys and get to watch a bad game against the Bengals. But our guys will be healthy and ready to go for CJ Stroud and the Houston Texans. Super excited about the playoffs next week. So if you guys enjoy what we do, we're going to have a watch party tomorrow. We're going to watch the Purple Rain. The Washington Huskies beat Michigan. Super excited about that. So I hope you guys have a great rest of your night. Again, appreciate all your super chats. Appreciate all of your patronage of this channel. Thank you guys so much. So thank you so much, Buckeye Nation. And thank you, Scoop family. I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Go Bucks.